Welcome to this presentation on iLearnReliability. And in this presentation we're going to talk about why iLearnReliability is e-learning. Here's a quick summary of the reasons. Because e-learning provides excellent learning retention, and even if you don't retain it, you can just go do retraining. We get to train everyone with e-learning. It's very low cost compared to the alternatives. It's self-paced, not everyone learns at the same pace. It's multi-tiered for awareness up to detailed training. It's easy to retrain staff, and it's very important that you do. And new staff and staff who change roles also get to be trained. Generally speaking, e-learning is more interesting and interactive. Now, you can look at a sample and see if you agree, but generally I think you'll find that it is. Training is consistent. Everyone who takes the e-learning course is trained in exactly the same way, and that's very important. Multiple sites can improve at once. Training can be monitored and measured. Now, I should say that, it's one thing for someone to stand up and say, e-learning is the best way if you don't offer any other options. Well, we do offer live training. We can come to your site and give you a course. We can have other people come to your site and give you a course. We may run public courses in the future. We already run lots and lots of public courses all over the world. We train approximately 2,500 people a year that way. But for this application, we believe e-learning is best suited to improving reliability in a plant, and we'll talk about why. So as I mentioned, we can deliver classes, but our existing classes do go way beyond the conventional training style. Okay, let's look at learning retention. Have you been to a normal training class? You're sitting there for 2 or 3 or 4 days. The question is, how much do you remember after the conventional class? On the last day of the course, how much do you remember from the first day? A week later, a month later, 6 months later, how much do you remember of everything you were trained? And of course that depends on how well you were trained in the first place, how good the instructor was, what tools he used, how quickly he moved through the material and all that sorts of stuff. Unfortunately, if you've got an instructor in front of you, you have to remember everything the instructor says. In this video, you can pause me and wind me back. In e-learning, you do it all at your own pace. With an instructor, you can ask an instructor to repeat things, but it gets a bit tiresome after a while. And when the instructor goes home, that's it, you're done. And that's the problem sometimes, it's a few days later, a few weeks later, you think, I wish I asked that instructor this question. With e-learning, you just repeat the section. You just do it again. You go through it again. Easy. And you can go through to the section you specifically want and just go through that part and repeat it if you want. When it comes to retraining, once is usually not enough. Even if it's just awareness training, people forget after a while. Go through it again. The awareness training is not very long. Sometimes it's just 20 or 30 minutes, sometimes even 15 minutes. It doesn't have to take a long time. But usually if you went and sought approval to repeat a training course, they're going to say, we've already spent that money. You've already been on that course. We're not sending you again. But with iLearnReliability, you can be trained and retrained as often as you like. No big deal. You get to train everyone with e-learning. Because of the way we set up our subscription licensing and all that sort of stuff, you get to train everyone. But you can't with conventional training. You can usually, each person pays quite a lot of money, whether it's on-site or off-site. You can't train everyone. Not everyone can attend the course because someone's got to run the plant as well. There's just restrictions. It just costs too much to train everyone. Some people just can't attend. Someone has to run the plant. New employees miss out. People who change job roles miss out. Bottom line is, with iLearnReliability, no one misses out. Cost is always an important factor. Instructor fees and for on-site and public course fees, it all costs a lot. Travel, accommodation, meals, travel time, time away from home, time away from work. It's all very expensive. Retraining, training of new staff, new employees, it all just adds up to being very expensive. The cost of our e-learning is very affordable. The per person fee for the training really is very low, and you get to retrain as many times as you need. The other nice thing about, or the issue of course, is self-training. Not everyone learns at the same pace. People have different starting points. Some people are already aware of a particular topic when they go into training. Some people are just getting started. So naturally the learning pace is going to be different for those two people. Bottom line is, different people have different levels of intelligence. Some people can, listen to facts and learn them and understand them very quickly. Other people need a bit more time. Some people like audio, some people like to read, some people like pictures. People just learn at different paces. Some people haven't studied for a long time. They might not have been, through university, and if they haven't had a lot of training, sometimes you have to sort of sit down and just concentrate. And the nice thing about self-paced training, you can do that. You can learn a bit later, repeat the training, whatever you like. But with traditional training, you just have to keep up or you miss out. The instructor can do his or her best to identify that someone's not keeping up, but we have an agenda, we have so much time, that's it, we've just got to get through it. So the beauty of iLearnReliability and e-learning, you learn at your own pace, one click at a time. Also, nice thing about e-learning, or at least the iLearnReliability e-learning, it's multi-tiered, because not everyone needs the same information. Senior managers and reliability engineers, technicians, plant floor, there's some people need just awareness training, some people need more detailed training. But a single course is generally geared towards one sort of person. It's either going to go into a lot of detail or it's not. So that means you might have to pay for a course that goes into a lot of detail, but start first with a course that's more basic, and it's just all adds to the cost. People shouldn't be taught information that's beneath them if they already understand it. It's a boring and waste of time if it's too basic. But likewise, if it's too advanced, it's demoralizing, it's confusing, it's just a waste of time, and you go backwards doing that. But iLearnReliability, it's self-paced, it's multi-tiered, you learn at your own pace, it's designed for that very issue. What do you do with new staff that join the company? What people do already with our iLearn products, one of the first things they do is they go through the iLearn material to get up to speed. It's a perfect way to initiate new staff. But in a normal training environment, they might have to go off to a course, because it's unlikely that an on-site course is going to be repeated. But when is the next course available? How long does that person have to wait to be trained that way? You can't repeat the on-site course. Bottom line is, with iLearnReliability, new staff can be trained immediately, going through the material that they need to go through at the pace they need to go through it. And the same is true with people who change roles. They get promotions, they change from one field to another, they need to be trained, so iLearnReliability is there to train them immediately. The other important thing with training is consistency. If you go to one presentation by one company and they talk about a topic, and you go to another presentation at a conference and someone from another company is talking about the same topic, but they seem to be talking about different things and they use different terminology and different styles. So the same is true with training. Just because a training agenda says something, it doesn't mean that everyone's going to be trained the same way. Consistency is important. Everyone should be trained the same way. Comprehensively, but they should be trained the same way. people need to use the same terminology. So when you talk to each other within the plant or from one plant to another plant, everyone should speak the same language. Not English, Spanish, but just in terms of reliability and maintenance practices and so on. The training shouldn't be influenced by that particular instructor or by whether, you know, what consulting they offer or, you know, whatever. With e-learning, everyone gets trained the same way. It's consistent. And we can talk about that in terms of sort of this parallel transformation. You've got multiple sites around the world or within the country, whatever it happens to be. Everyone needs to be trained the same way at each of those sites, but why don't you train everyone at the same time? Everyone can be getting up to speed at the same time, and that way the corporate is getting the benefits of reliability improvement much more quickly than doing it sequentially. But if you're using conventional training techniques, that's a lot of training. If you're doing on-site courses, that's a lot of people to come to your site, then that site, then that site, and then there's a consistency problem as well, training between different countries and even different parts of the same country. But with iLearnReliability, everyone's trained the same way, and everyone from each plant is trained the same way, and all at the same time. So you get to reliable plants more quickly across the corporation. And the good thing about e-learning is you can monitor the progress, you can look at quiz scores, you can look at knowledge gained, you know, what did they know before, what did they know after, competency improvement, all sorts of things. Generally speaking, with conventional training, that's not an option. So it is helpful to have records of who's been trained, where they were trained, when they were trained, what training they had received, and so on. It's very helpful to measure knowledge gain and to identify interest and capability. You might have someone who's right now doing a particular job, you give them some training and hey, they really lap it up and they do well on the quiz, and maybe they are interested in more training. You might have identified someone who'd make a great condition monitoring technician or root cause failure analyst or someone like that, who knows. With iLearnReliability, you have complete records of everyone who was trained and how they did in quizzes and so on. And, you know, for training to be effective, it needs to be interesting. And, okay, you have to be the judge. This presentation, we're just going through slides and stuff. You need to look at iLearnReliability and see just how different it is, because there's lots of death by PowerPoint training courses out there. Just because a person understands root cause failure analysis or planning and scheduling doesn't mean they're very good at training and using modern techniques and animations and things like that. You know, these days people expect more. They see all the animations and things on television, they expect more from their training. You know, the other thing is that studies show that using a combination of audio, written speech, animations, interactive elements, and quizzes are very effective. If you look at what's retained, the skill improvements and so on, using all of these elements really improve. Sitting in the back of a room listening to a guy talk for 3 or 4 days isn't the most effective way to be trained. E-learning and Mobius e-learning is designed to be interesting, engaging and effective. But you be the judge. Just have a look at some of our samples, go in and do it, get a trial account. So without going into too much detail, really it's pointless. You know, you're not there to just tick a box. If people are going to be trained, it needs to be effective. The content must be understood and remembered. Don't just say, right, they've been on that course, we've done our job. It just doesn't work that way. And the training, the effectiveness of the training should be independent of the age of the person, the previous knowledge that they had, the particular interests they had, and whatever experience they had. You know, using these interactive elements and the animations and so on, the self-paced nature of it, the quizzes to provide feedback to whether they're, you know, understanding or not, all make the training much more effective. And here are some samples. In the worst case, there'll be some text that is narrated and some sort of picture that illustrates a point. So they will hear it, see it, and they'll have an associated picture. Just one thought at a time. It's not like this movie that's just going on and on. I'm just talking and talking and talking. You see one slide, you see it, I understand it, yep, I move to the next slide. If I go through a few slides, let's go over that again, I go back. A lot of the slides also have animations. And even though we could just show a picture of that bearing, it's a bit more interesting because it's moving and, you know, showing you what's going on. But again, there'd be the text and the narration. If we're talking about bearing faults or bearing measurements or whatever, hey, the animation helps explain. If we're talking about misalignment, in this case, you can see the forces, you can see the stress on the bolts and so on. The animations are exaggerated, but you sort of have to do that to make the point. In this case, there might be some narration without the text, just so that the animation's nice and big. There's also simulations, little interactive graphs. So, you know, you click and the graph changes and, you know, just makes it all just that much more interesting. In this case, we can put a little weight on there and let it swing around. And I can stick another weight on and see how that affects it. There's lots of things. There's just lots of interactive elements like that, and lots of animations, really cool 3D animations. They make the training more interesting, make it easier to understand what it is you're talking about. You know, they say a picture tells 1,000 words. Well, these animations, I don't know how many words, but you really get to understand, hey, what's inside that machine? What happens when those little tiny but hard particles get between the bearing and the surface? That's why there's damage. How does the pump work? What is OEE and how is it measured? And what are the different elements? You know, what does that mean? And so on. Just lots of interactive stuff. We could go on with these. I could show you 1,000 animations and hundreds of interactive elements, but I'm guessing you probably have other things to do, so we should wrap this up, I guess. There is much more I could say about iLearnReliability, but we've got other movies that you can look at. If you're ready to take the next step, I'd love to tell you about the subscription prices. Also, if you'd like to see, you know, we've just been talking about training, maybe you want to see whether I'm correct in saying that e-learning is a better way to learn and more interactive and more interesting and so on. You can see it for yourself. So just contact us, learn@mobiusinstitute.com, or feel free to call us or talk to one of our resellers or whatever suits you best. But thank you very much for viewing this presentation.